Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the special joint meeting of the Glendale City Council, the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, and the Glendale Housing Authority for January 21st, 2011. May we have the roll call, please, for council?
Council members Draymond.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Montero.
Here.
Weaver. Mayor Najarian.
Here.
We have a roll call for the redevelopment agency, please.
Agency members Draymond.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Montero.
Here.
Weaver. Chair Friedman.
Here.
Roll call for the Housing Authority. Authority members Draymond.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Mincy.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Brazian.
Here.
Weaver. Chair Quintero.
Here.
May we have your report, please?
Agenda for the January 21, 2011 special joint meeting of the Glendale City Council, the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, and the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, January 20, 2011 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. The first item.
The items before you today is Director of Community Development regarding approval of cooperation agreements and amendments to city agency cooperation agreements relating to the public improvements, affordable housing, and other projects and programs and associated administrative expenses. At 1A is Council Resolution approving cooperation agreement between the City and the Redevelopment Agency relating to public improvements and other projects and programs, making certain determinations and findings thereto. At B is an agency resolution approving cooperation agreement between the Redevelopment Agency and the City related to public improvements and other projects and programs and making certain determinations and findings thereto. At C is an agency resolution approving cooperation agreements between the Redevelopment Agency and the Housing Authority for payment of costs associated with certain redevelopment agency-funded low and moderate income housing projects and making certain determinations and findings related thereto. At D is an authority resolution approving cooperation agreement between the Housing Authority and the Redevelopment Agency for payment of costs associated with certain redevelopment agency-funded low and moderate income housing projects, making certain determinations and findings related thereto. E is council resolution approving the amendment to cooperation and reimbursement agreements between the City and Redevelopment Agency for the purpose of amending the repayment schedules of said agreements. F is agency resolution approving the amendment to cooperation and reimbursement agreements between the Redevelopment Agency and the City for the purpose of amending repayment schedules of said agreements. G is council resolution making findings relating to the expenditure of low and moderate income housing funds outside of the Redevelopment Agency project areas. That is what is before these three bodies today.
Thank you. Before we begin and go to Ms. Beers, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this special meeting. We usually don't meet on Fridays, and we usually don't meet at 9 a.m. Mr. Weaver, I understand, is celebrating the birth of his second granddaughter, so he is justifiably absent today, and best wishes to Dave and his daughter, and happy grandmother and parents and everyone in the Weaver family. But we're here today because the new governor, Jerry Brown, has indicated that it is his intention to abolish and disband the redevelopment agencies throughout the state and assume those funds that the redevelopment agency would otherwise be accumulating through tax increments and subsume them into the state budget to help close the $25 billion budget gap that he has. We are meeting on an urgent basis because several reports indicate that these actions may take place very quickly in a very short period of time. But what we're not here to do is to discuss the merits or the drawbacks of any particular redevelopment plan, any redevelopment proposed project, or anything of that nature. These are general broad brush resolutions that each one of the three agencies that are here today are going to consider and attempt to basically safeguard the redevelopment agency funds from being raided by the state. I don't anticipate this to be a long meeting, so those of you that have events later on, the rest of your busy schedules, I'm hoping to have us out here no later than 10 o'clock, perhaps even sooner. And I would like to ask, in an effort to keep this streamlined, to let's permit staff to go through their presentation, which they've been working on till the wee hours of the morning, and trimmed it down to be as precise as possible before we start our questioning. Ms. Friedman.
I just wanted to say that yesterday I was in Sacramento, and I did see our Assembly member, Mike Gatto. He didn't know about this meeting because it was called, in an emergency fashion, but he just wanted me to let all of you know who are watching this at home and in this room that he's very concerned about this issue, that if he had had a longer lag time, he would have liked to be here to address you. He's willing to come and speak to the City Council about the redevelopment issue, and that he will be watching this, on tape when he has time, and will weigh in and is certainly paying attention to this and advocating on our behalf. Thank you.
Right, and to be fair to our Assembly people, this is not a proposal that was generated from the legislature. This is from Governor Brown himself and his staff. Ms. Beers.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council and agency members, Councilmember Weaver also wanted you to know that he's had a long-standing appointment at 9 a.m. this morning, and if that concludes in a timely manner and we're still here, he'll be on his way. So he wanted you to know that as well. If you'll indulge,
The birth of the grandchild sounds a little better than
it does. But he really wanted me to say that too, because he does want to be here. I'll just make a few comments before going to Phil Lanzafame. As you are all aware, as part of the state's budget proposal, the governor has proposed a complete abolishment of redevelopment in California. If his plan is approved, it will destroy local economic growth, quality of life improvements, and elimination of jobs, funding of affordable housing, building public infrastructure improvements, and creating commercial opportunities. It is important to note that the governor's plan also circumvents Proposition 22, which passed overwhelmingly last November to stop the state from raiding local government funds, in particular redevelopment funds. Proposition 22 passed 61 to 39%. Redevelopment activities support over 304,000 full-time and part-time private sector jobs on an annual basis. Over the past 20 years, the state takeaways from Glendale alone have totaled over $110 million. If the governor's proposal to eliminate redevelopment agents, it is so wrong, and it is wrong because it will not provide expected budget relief to the state or local governments after the bond and contractual obligations have been repaid. It will destroy billions of dollars in local economic activity and hundreds of thousands of jobs. It will kill the state's only meaningful programs to provide affordable housing, and it will block our efforts in California to grow responsibly. Phil is going to take you through a little bit of redevelopment history. He'll discuss the threats before us and many other cities, and also discuss some of the options that are before you to help safeguard Glendale and its redevelopment funds. Lastly, I did want to mention that there are a couple of hearings in February 3rd and February 7th in Sacramento, and I wanted you to be aware of those, and City Council members, agency members may want to consider attending. We'll get those specific times and see who wants to attend. With that, I will go to Philip Lanzafame, and he does have a quick PowerPoint presentation to take us through this morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Ms. Chair, members of the Redevelopment Agency, and Mr. Chairman, members of the Housing Authority. As Ms. Beers said, we do have a quick presentation for you just to give you some background and put this issue in context related to Glendale. Redevelopment is a local tool. It is designed to allow the local entity to take some control over its own destiny and assist those local entities in the elimination of blight to achieve some desired goals, and specifically the creation of jobs. It is a tremendous economic engine. Redevelopment has been portrayed as pandering to developers and rich people that don't need the money. This is really what redevelopment is about in the state of California and in Glendale. Our main mission is elimination of blight. That is what we are created for. The result is revival of downtowns and business districts. Job creation. We heard about the number of jobs that are created throughout the state. We have similar numbers in Glendale. Affordable housing. City of Glendale has developed over 1,000 units as part of our program. Public improvements. Many of the things that Ms. Beers had mentioned. Fire stations. We've The redevelopment agency here partially funded Fire Station 21, our fire headquarters. Green and sustainable development. This is a major issue for the California Redevelopment Agency, and they're trying to promote green growth, and then cleanup of contaminated sites. You'd ask yourself, what would the state of California do to attract a business that conducts $40 billion of economic activity in the state, employs 300,000 people, and pays $2 billion in state and local taxes? And I would add to that, develops 5,000 affordable units every year. What would the state of California do? That's what redevelopment does throughout the state. It is an important economic engine, an important quality of life engine. We are about building our way to improving quality of life. These are some of the things that have happened or are planned to happen in Glendale that go directly to our residents' quality of life, to provide those amenities and those improvements that make Glendale why we've all chose to live or work here. Just today, I talked about the fire station, affordable housing. Our program has built over 1,000 units. Facilities, we've funded the Adult Recreation Center, the Recycle Center and Water Treatment. Our Transit Center was partially funded by the Redevelopment Agency. Art and culture, we have the Alex Theater as a regional performing arts center because of your Redevelopment Agency. We are talking to Lemley to bring an art house theater to Glendale. The Art and Entertainment District and the temporary art exhibits, these are direct programs that go to art and culture and reviving that in the city of Glendale. And then parks. We've had a lot of history with our parks, beginning with the cap over the Verdugo Wash, Griffith Manor Park. We are proposing a soccer field as a joint project with Glendale Unified School District. We also loaned money to the school district to put artificial turf at Moyes Field at Glendale, where several of our high schools play. It's also about job creation and revenue generation to the city of Glendale, the general fund. We have several commercial projects. The Americana, the Embassy Suites, and Disney just recently provided over 9,000 jobs, both construction and permanent jobs. Hilton, Nestle USA, international headquarters for Nestle USA, is here in Glendale and has 200 to 300 people employed there. Public improvements. These construction jobs, of those 300,000 that I had mentioned in the state of California, about 180,000 of those are high-paying construction jobs. We have built all of our downtown public parking garages. We are looking forward to any improvements that come out of the mobility plan to be funded in the central project area. So these are all things that go to quality of life, that go to job creation, that go to revenue generation, that were it not for a redevelopment agency here in Glendale, it would fall to the general fund, which we know can't support it to the level of the redevelopment agency. We tried to put redevelopment in the city of Glendale in some kind of context so that people could equate. What does that mean? What does it mean to have a redevelopment project program in Glendale? Of these 4 projects, there are the Galleria, which was our first project in the downtown, the Americana at Brand, the Hilton, and the Embassy Suites. Together, those generated just under $8 million to the general fund last year. That equates to 20% of fire's personnel budget, or 46 positions. 15% of police's personnel budget, 51 positions. If you had that revenue, it would cover the entire library budget for a year, the entire parks maintenance budget. It would fund 60% of the cost to redo Central Avenue. It would build an entire adult recreation center, and it would build 1.5 Pacific pools. That's how important that revenue that is produced from these redevelopment projects, but for the redevelopment agency, would not have occurred. Now, as Ms. Beer said, the state is projecting a $25 billion deficit And this is not the first time that they have been in trouble, and they've turned to cities as well as Glendale. And over the last 20 years, I think we would all agree that here that we have paid our fair share, $113 million in the last 20 years. This is revenue that is leaving the city of Glendale and going elsewhere. Now, we've listed all of the places where the state, in the years that the state has taken our revenue. We're focusing on that in the red, which is our tax increment. Almost $22 million since 1992 through ERAF shifts. Ms. Beers had talked briefly, the state of California, the authority for redevelopment and the direction of those property taxes to the redevelopment agencies, the local redevelopment agencies, is embedded in our state constitution and has been for more than half a century. 3 months ago, the electorate of the state of California said, through Prop 22, we want you to protect local funding, including redevelopment. This seems to be another end run around both of those constitutional provisions to take money out of the city of Glendale and deliver it to the state. So the governor has proposed just eliminating. In years past, they have tried to get around, the state has tried to get around constitutional provisions that protect those dollars. In this one, it's a grand scheme to just eliminate that entity that would receive those dollars, and they would all be diverted to the state. In our projections, in looking forward, what kind of increment would we collect? We believe that we've estimated it's about $200 million if redevelopment were eliminated between now and the end of our project area in San Fernando, which is 2043. That has a net present value of about $120 million. So what can we do? As we said in our introductory comments, we're here to protect the local revenue that was directed to Glendale and is now being proposed to be diverted elsewhere. This is an effort to tie up and obligate that money in the programs that you, acting as the City Council, as the redevelopment agency, and as the Housing Authority, have either directed staff or have included in your implementation plan. We want to protect the engine that is local economy in Glendale. The first in primary for us is when we established our project areas, the City of Glendale loaned the redevelopment agency several million dollars. And we have been accruing that and paying that, but we want to make sure that we protect that loan. We already have cooperation agreements, contractual obligations between the city and the redevelopment agency. What this action will do is amend those to include a specific repayment schedule, and it's included as an attachment to that cooperation agreement. Second agreement is a new cooperation agreement between the city and the redevelopment agency. It will obligate the city to carry out those economic projects, economic development, redevelopment projects that you have directed. It will obligate the redevelopment agency to pay for those programs through the tax increment, and it will identify that obligation as debt for which a redevelopment agency can receive tax increment. Included with that in your resolution are findings for what we call the 33445 findings. This is the provision in the state code that allows redevelopment agencies to pay for public improvements when there's no other feasible financing source. And in this case, in your staff report, we have given you some background on the city's economic health and their inability to fund these public improvements. So on your projects, there are several public improvements, such as the pass-through, the library, parking, the alley parking reconfiguration, the soccer field that we would like to do. And then finally, a similar agreement, cooperation agreement between the Housing Authority and the Redevelopment Agency. Does the same thing, obligates the Housing Authority to carry out the housing program, obligates the agency to pay for that with its tax increment, and identifies that as debt. Also included in that resolution are findings that doing work outside of the project area, creating affordable housing outside the project area, is of benefit to the project area. And this is a standard finding that you have been able to make in years past. Last, just go over what some of the other cities in California are doing. There are 12 cities that have adopted similar contracts to protect their jobs, to protect that economic engine. Long Beach and Santa Monica, Pasadena, our partner to the east, Palmdale. The two largest agencies in the state, Los Angeles and San Jose, have initiated those actions. They have not yet completed them, but they have been initiated. There are some, San Diego and Fresno, that have proposed resolutions opposing the governor's action. And again, this is all based on concerns over the effect it will have on job creation and economic recovery. In fact, we look at it and say we're really in an economic bind, and coming out of that is going to be done through job creation. And then finally, 10 cities have voiced opposition, publicly voiced opposition, and or are considering similar actions to those for your consideration today. Among those, Sacramento, Santa Ana are some of the larger redevelopment project areas in the state. That concludes our presentation. Staff is here from legal, from redevelopment, from housing. We have our financial consultant that has helped us prepare our projections, and we're available for any questions.
Okay, I have some cards from the public. Let's go to the public first. Already 3 minutes each. Greg Astorian, followed by Ray Patel. Robert Silverstein.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Chair, and agency members, my name is Greg Astorian, resident of the city of Glendale. Madam Chair, you can put your boots in the oven, won't make them into biscuits. That's exactly what the former governor has tried to do by taking away about $2 billion in recent years from the agencies, and that's what this present governor is trying to do. Now, that didn't work then, it's not going to work now. In the short run, in the short term, really short term, this body must take steps to protect the projects that are on the books or are going to be coming on or under negotiations, or even if they are at their nascent stages, in the preliminary stages. I'll give you an example. The Exchange, Band Theaters. That building is going to be vacant, about 50-some-odd-thousand square feet, within 6 months. Unless there is a proactive effort between this agency and the ownership of that building, that property, that the lofty ideas that we have about the arts and entertainment district is not going to be, or it's going to be affected very badly. To be quite honestly, I'll throw in another example, City Center 2. Development agreements are already in place for that project. If that project is not going to come into fruition with this, with what this governor is trying to do, it won't, and I can promise you that. That's about $3 million worth of loss in property taxes, in TOT sharing, and in impact library and parks impact fees. To be quite honest with you, you've got your work cut out with you. I think you need to contact and do a public outreach, kind of giving a gigabyte in a nanosecond, because citizenry does not have the time to sit down and get with this arcane redevelopment calculations and so forth. But you need to do that. Your citizens will be squarely behind you when they understand exactly what Mr. Blanzafame suggested. Truncate it. Reach out. Let them know about this thing and how it's going to be affecting their lives. This governor is looking for oranges on an apple tree. Tell him it's a fruitless search. Thank you.
Thank you. Ray Patel, followed by Robert Silverstein.
Good morning. Ray Patel. I'm the owner of the Golden Key Hotel at 123 West Colorado Street. First of all, I want to thank the community of Glendale, the residents, the business owners, my neighbors. In the past few weeks, overwhelmed by emails and letters and drop-bys to support us in staying at the present location that we're at and operating. And that's what I would like to do, and that's what my family would like to do. That's why we came to Glendale. And I hope as the weeks go on that you folks up there will see the same thing and
As it
support
relates
us.
to the issues, Mr. Patel.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Robert Silverstein.
Thank you, honorable council members. My name is Robert Silverstein. I'm an attorney with the Silverstein Law Firm in Pasadena, and I represent Mr. Ray Patel in the Golden Key Hotel. Let the record reflect that this morning I did turn in written objections for the record, which consists of a 6-page letter with an attachment, and those state some of our initial objections to the approval of the actions before you today. We're very concerned about the haste with which you are acting and the legality or illegality of the actions that you are contemplating taking. Yesterday I was watching a webcast where the California Redevelopment Association was speaking to redevelopment agencies across the state in a panic about what Governor Brown is proposing to do. And it was interesting because the head of the association, Mr. Sherrill, was recommending, advocating that agencies do what you're doing, which is rush headlong into the abyss in a desperate effort to try to avoid having your redevelopment funds seized by the state. But at the same time, he cautioned, and this is the part that I agree with, he cautioned that don't rush too fast because we sort of don't know what's going on, and you don't want to do things that are going to get you into legal trouble. And I would respectfully submit that what is happening here with the haste and with the lack of adequate analysis, as well as the lack of fair notice to the public, will result in that second issue which Mr. Sherrill warned his members about. And if you would please review the objections that I have turned in this morning prior to voting, I think that would help you make a decision either to table this or to vote no. Very briefly, there are some serious concerns about both an unconstitutional gift of public funds and waste or misuse of taxpayer funds under Code of Civil Procedure Section 526A. In addition, there are very significant CEQA objections which we have. There is a clear line of authority which says even if an agency is only adopting an approval that doesn't actually result in a physical change in the environment, but inevitably sets in motion physical changes in the environment, whether direct or indirect, that requires CEQA approval. And here, in the redevelopment context, we already know that the mere approval of a disposition and development agreement requires CEQA approval. When we are talking about the transfer and the shifting of such vast amounts of money and assets and properties and obligations and bond financing and a number of other things that I don't know because I haven't had an opportunity to look at it, that clearly implicates CEQA because you will inevitably set in motion a process that will accelerate existing redevelopment projects or plans so that actual construction comes to fruition. That in turn leads to inevitable change in the environment. If I may have 2 more minutes just to complete my comments.
No, I'm sorry. We're giving everyone 3 minutes, and were I to break that, then we'd have uncontrolled speaking.
Mr. Patel only took 1 of his 3 minutes. Would it be all right if I took 1 of his remaining 2?
Sir, I'll give you 30 seconds to sum up, but we're not swapping. It's not a cap and trade exercise we're going through.
Well, it's an exercise in hearing the public, and I think that that's an important exercise, especially when we're dealing with issues such as redevelopment.
Your time is running, sir.
Which may have started out as a good concept, and I think most of us would agree that certain positive things have been achieved. However, it is notorious for grinding the little guy down, for mismanagement of funds, and for abusing the power of eminent domain. And that is what is so upsetting to such a large segment of the public. And what is happening here today is a perpetuation of a system that has become increasingly abusive to the public. And we really ask that you refrain from rushing ahead with what you are proposing to do today. And I would respectfully submit that the objections that I turned in, which were only prepared in the last 6 hours, be reviewed by you and your counsel. And I appreciate your consideration of our comments.
Thank you. Christopher Sutton, followed by Rick Lemo.
My name is Christopher Sutton. I'm an attorney in Pasadena, independent of Mr. Silverstein, but representing Mr. Patel and the Golden Key Hotel. What you're engaging here is criminal. It is money laundering. It is a violation of the state penal code. It's a violation of the federal criminal code. You are taking public money for the express purpose of denying it to school children and hiding it to subsidize Mr. Caruso and his development. What this is about is theft, illegality, immorality. Mr. Lanzafame did not tell you what happened in Brea when he was there. 2 of the council members were subject to criminal prosecution. You are going to be subject to criminal prosecution, including Mr. Lanzafame, the city attorney, everyone else. Proposition 22 stated, if you read it, the legislature retained its power under 33607 of the Health and Safety Code to direct redevelopment money. It had a huge loophole in it. Article 16, Section 16 of the state constitution gives the legislature plenary control of the management of redevelopment agencies. When you talk about the state, what you're talking about is public schools. What you're talking about is the court system, the jails, the prison, law enforcement, protection of the forests, public parks. What you're talking about are basic, fundamental services of civilized society. And yet you want to put Mr. Caruso and other subsidized developers ahead of the needs of civilized society. What you're doing is engaging in anarchy in order to subsidize developers. And this is what you're proposing. The Housing Authority is a state agency that can be controlled by the legislature. The CRA is a state agency that can be controlled by the legislature. 33445 of the Health and Safety Code does not allow you to engage in fraud or gift of public funds as held in Meany versus Sacramento. It's subject to litigation and attack if you make this finding not supported by evidence and simply coming in at the last minute. This is a dishonest process. The state is bankrupt, and you want to hide money from school children and from public safety. That's what you're doing. You want to bankrupt the state so that you can subsidize developers, and that is morally reprehensible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Judy Kendall. I'm sorry. We had. Did someone switch the card? Okay. Sorry. Judy Kendall.
Good morning. My name is Judy Kendall. I'm Executive Vice President of the Glendale Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Chamber. At the meeting of the Board of Directors on January 18th, we took a position in opposition to the Governor's proposed abolishment of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. This was at the request of several of our board members and business members at large. We will send letters to the governor and to legislators stating our position, and we support you with whatever you can legally do to extend the life of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other cards. I'd like to open it up for discussion. Mr. Garcia. Are we going to be indicted?
No.
I mean, wow, there was quite a few dramatic moments from the Patel team there.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Redevelopment Housing Authority, let me just address some of the substantive issues that were addressed. With respect to the Brown Act, I think there's I just briefly looked at the letter, so I didn't have a chance to respond to everything, but or to review everything. The notice that went out for this meeting was posted 24 hours before the meeting. The notice does contain sufficient information about the actions, specifically discussing the payment of costs for affordable housing projects, public improvements, other projects that the agency is proposing. The acts that are, or the recommendations by staff on this item are supported by substantial evidence. The report and the attachments include the information supporting those determinations. With respect to CEQA, our view is that this action is exempt from a requirement that either an initial study be performed or environmental impact report be prepared, because this is simply a financial mechanism to put in place cooperation agreements to commit the agency dollars to these projects over the remaining life of the 2 redevelopment projects. So in our view, the actions that are being proposed here violate neither the Brown Act nor CEQA nor any other provision of law.
Thank you. That was my understanding as well, that CEQA, the fact that you're obligating funding to an agency does not trigger CEQA because there is no project. CEQA is triggered by a project.
And there's no commitment of discretion to any of these projects. And these projects are previously discussed in the agency's implementation plans, or have been previously discussed by the agency or the housing authority. And this is simply putting the funds in place to carry out those projects for the remaining life of the project areas.
Okay, thank you. And let's try and put this in a gigasecond, in a nanometer, or a nanosecond, in a gigabyte. What we're doing, and I appreciate the presentation by Phil Lanzafame. What we're doing is that each of the 3 agencies represented here, the Council, the Housing Authority, and the Redevelopment Agency, are obligating funds, are what funds would be otherwise coming to and flowing through the Redevelopment Agency. They are obligating the repayment of those funds that are essentially used for projects to be determined. Certainly we have projects on the table that may be more concrete and more pertinent, but there are many that are in the future that have not been contemplated. This isn't about the Golden Key Hotel. This isn't about Mr. Caruso. This is about each one of our agencies' budgets that came upon to rely on the flow of the funds based on the tax increment through the project areas, the 2 project areas that we have that were created years ago. Am I correct in
that's correct, Mr. Mayor.
We're not voting on any particular project. We're not approving the pick any project we have talked about, and any project that is a pipe dream in any of our earlier discussions. But the money is being preserved by each one of those agencies. Is that essentially what we're doing today?
It's essentially what it's doing. It's obligating the city to complete the projects as the money comes in, and to actually review them individually with CEQA and all appropriate land use controls, and then it's committing the agency to transfer the tax increment that is debt from these projects to the city to perform them, or the housing authority for the affordable housing projects.
And the processes that have been developed and instituted are not short-circuited. There's no end run around any particular project. If a project requires a CEQA review, that project will have to receive one.
That's correct. And as Mr. Lansdale pointed out, some of these projects are already in existing cooperation agreements, or the implementation plans, and we also have an existing cooperation agreement that we're amending to specifically provide repayment terms, scope of the agreement.
Okay, so it may seem a little bit confusing to those of you who are not familiar with the process of redevelopment and the different agencies that are sitting before you today. But let's follow up with any other questions that anyone has. Friedman.
Just a comment with regard to the gentleman who basically accused of, I guess, hating children and maybe puppies and parks and all of those kinds of good things. It's interesting. Whenever Sacramento needs to raise money or whenever they can't balance their budget, it always comes down to whoever they're against hates children, you know. If they can't figure out how to balance their budget, if they spend too much money in a year, well, if you don't support raising taxes, if you don't support whatever they want to do, it's because you hate children. It seems to be kind of the standard fallback position. But interestingly, last night I was at a community function where I sat next to one of our Glendale school board members, and maybe things are different in Pasadena where the gentleman was from, but at least for the Glendale school board member that I sat next to, was very concerned about what was happening with redevelopment and said to me in no uncertain terms that she supported maintaining redevelopment because not only do our schools get money for all kinds of programs through redevelopment, but she felt that it was important that those children, when they graduate, have jobs to go to and have a vibrant economy, and redevelopment is really the city's only tool to accomplish that. Not only that, but a lot of those children who go to Glendale Unified live in affordable housing projects. And let's not forget that none of those affordable housing projects would be here if it wasn't for redevelopment. And if it's not for redevelopment, we lack the funds to build any more affordable housing. So all of these things are tied together, and you can't just take one out of context. And if we're acting quickly, it's because we've been put in a position by Sacramento of having to respond very quickly to legislation that's really being rammed through. Does Sacramento have huge challenges? Absolutely. Do we want to work with them? I personally would love to find a way to work with them. But this has really been an all-or-nothing proposal, and I think as a city we have to protect ourselves. And a lot of the programs that our residents expect to continue, like the Alex Theater, are currently funded through redevelopment. And if in a few months these agencies sunset, that's funding goes away for that. It goes away for the Lemley. It goes away for affordable housing, all affordable housing. It goes away for art and vacant storefronts. It goes away for the Art and Entertainment District. It goes away for the San Fernando Corridor and what we're trying to accomplish there. And for lots of other programs that the community is looking forward to, not to mention libraries, which receive a substantial amount of funding through redevelopment. So I think it's important that the public knows what's at stake and not listen to the hyperbole and the dramatic, arm waving about illegalities and how we hate children and all of that. I don't hate children, at least not all children, or some children. But this is going to be an ongoing discussion, and my only hesitation, and I believe that the reason Los Angeles debated these, proposed them, put them on the books, and then didn't adopt them is because they're bargaining with the state. From what I understand, the big 10 cities are sitting down with the governor, and hopefully there's some horse trading going on and some room for negotiation. Now, we're not a big enough city to participate in that, but I wonder whether putting this on the table and trying to kind of hold it out as a bargaining chip helps at all, or whether it's something that we should just adopt to protect ourselves. That's sort of the question I have at this point. I guess it's a question for the city attorney. And I also am wondering whether, well, I won't ask about that, but what do you think about whether we're in better position if we just pass this, or whether we're in a better position if we kind of put it on hold, for lack of a better word, to be able to trigger at a moment's notice now that we've had the hearing?
Agency Chair Freeman, our view of the City Attorney's Office is better to adopt this to document what indebtedness the agency will have over the remaining life of the project areas. And then there will still be additional discussions and negotiations at the state level. But not knowing, the only certainty there is that there's not a lot of certainty. So we can only recommend that you take this action if it's between that and not doing anything else. I hope that helps. But again, we don't really know what those negotiations are at the state level.
Are there any drawbacks to adopting this? Can this get us in any kind of trouble if redevelopment agencies are not put out of business?
As far as, no, this is essentially what we believe we can do at this point to, again, incur additional indebtedness over the remaining life of the project areas. There may be challenges to what all the different agencies are doing, but as far as we look at it, there's not necessarily a drawback.
Sure.
Well, for me, I'll vote for this today, although I do feel it's a bit premature, because I see it as basically a ministerial action. So that's exactly what I'm thinking and exactly what I'm voting for.
Third Raymond.
Well, I have a number of comments. I'm not sure what order to place them in. I haven't really thought it out. I've been wondering since I first ran for office, when it would occur that I'd be sitting up here that would be accused of anarchy. Let me run through that list. Child abuse, anarchy, theft, fraud. Mr. Mayor, I think the only thing that was left out was bad breath.
Forgot money laundering.
Money laundering. Pardon me. Money laundering.
Heard that one before.
Money laundering. In any case, I thought I came from a previous career that dealt with theatrics. I'll add to your list, Councilmember Friedman, hyperbole, high rhetoric, threats, theatrics. Please. This is rather serious business, gentlemen. And this is simply rhetoric aimed at a particular issue, and we're not dealing with that issue, your client's issue here today. And I kind of resent trying to reframe the issue as about your client's issue. I'll add something to that list. Nonsense. By the way, in the list of benefits to our citizens and the amenities and programs that this city and our residents have come to expect and demand, I think Councilmember Friedman, Chair Friedman, put it absolutely correctly. These different programs. There's also the ability to continue in the future to develop projects that benefit our schools. We have joint projects with our schools. And I had the opportunity to speak to an administrator with the Glendale Unified a week ago about this element of holding up children and saying, you know, it's child abuse if you disagree with the state. They know what the numbers are really all about with regard to the schools. The schools are going to end up exactly where the schools are now. There's going to be no net benefit to the schools. In addition to that, the state is flogging, the governor is flogging this issue of the benefit to the counties, the money that is really due the counties. Of course, what they don't tell you is that all the programs that are going to be pushed off onto the counties are going to put the counties in an even more serious deficit situation than they are now. So these are really straw men issues. What it really comes down to is that residents in cities across this state expect that local dollars are going to be local dollars. They've come to depend on that. They expect that. And to the best of my ability as an elected official in this city, I'm going to keep true to that desire. Yes, I agree with Councilmember Quintero. This is ministerial, and I will support it. I will continue to follow the issue as closely as I can and continue to advocate on this issue as strongly as I can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Razia?
A lot was said, but I have a few words to say. Since I'm coming from Soviets and I lived there half of my life, to me it's like becoming a Soviet state little by little. That's not fair. That's what I need to tell.
Okay. So we have different resolutions for each of the different entities up here. Can they be combined? Can each entity combine its own resolutions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so if someone would move 1A, E, and G, AEG, for council, I'll entertain that motion. There's such a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, roll call for AEG.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Weaver, Mayor Najarian.
Yes. And I'll move 1B, C, and F for the agency.
Second.
Give a roll call, please.
Agency members Draymond,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Weaver, Chair Friedman.
Yes.
And I'll move 1D for housing.
Roll call.
Authority members Draymond,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
NC,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Barazian,
Yes.
Weaver, Chair Quintero.
Yes.
Did you need a second for that motion?
No, I don't think we did we?
I didn't hear
But
one.
do you need one, I said?
Actually, I heard Laura.
Yeah,
Oh, Laura
Laura
did,
said
okay.
it. Thank you. I thought I heard someone. I wasn't sure. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn for council
Do we have housing?
I'm sorry, Mr.
I need to clarify, he was not my attorney.
You can talk to us
He
after.
said on behalf of Silverstein was representing me today.
Okay. So
I'm
Mr.
representing
Patel.
Mr. Patel. Mr. Sutton does not represent
Okay.
Mr. Patel.
For the record, Mr. Patel disavows any of the comments made by Mr. Sutton. Is there a motion to adjourn for council?
So move.
Second.
Council's adjourned.
Motion. Go ahead.
Motion to adjourn for the Housing Authority.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a motion for the agency?
Move to adjourn for agency.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.